Hey, welcome to Mooney Reads. My name is Beck, and today I'm going to be doing the Obscure Book Tag. The Obscure Book Tag was created by Ladette M. I will put their channel in the description below. And this is basically to show off the books that you don't really get a chance to in most of your other videos. Since I have a pretty large book collection and I also have a problem getting rid of books and also picking up random stuff when I see that it's free or super cheap. I have some things that I definitely haven't really gotten a chance to talk about before, other than maybe mentioning some of them in bookshelf tours. The first prompt for this tag is the gift. Someone bought this for you. That's the only reason you own this. And for that, I have My Mother Loved Tea by David C. Bigelow. I have yet to read this, although I probably should because it's not really that long, just to see what all it actually is. My grandparents got me this. If I had to guess, they probably went to a tea factory or plantation or something and picked this up for me because they knew I like books and tea. I think I also got some tea samples with this. I assume that this is about Ruth Bigelow and what she did with tea. Prompt number 2 is The Fandom, a book from a fandom that you are no longer a part of. And I think this is supposed to be a game, a TV show, band, or something like that. Of course, if it was book series, I have several book series that I could show you, but I have a couple of things from a fandom that I guess I wouldn't say that I'm a part of the fandom anymore. I am super behind on the show. I still really like it. It's not something that I've disconnected myself from. That is Doctor Who. I got for Christmas one year these two really nice editions of some of the stories. I still really like Doctor Who. I just haven't watched it in a really long time. I was super into it starting in probably 2012 through like 2015. I was really big into it. But the last episode that I saw was the regeneration from Matt Smith to Capaldi. So I am that far behind. Now, I didn't totally intentionally stop watching, but there were a number of reasons why I stopped. Of course, I was interested to see where it would go, especially since that finale that I stopped at introduced some interesting ways to think about the Doctor and how the different generations could be seen as kind of his, like, grieving process a little bit since the war. However, first of all, I was very tired of Clara. I do not like the way that Moffat writes women. He can write one type of woman, and that is the type of woman that Amy and Riversong and Clara are. It would just be really nice to see half of the population not be treated as a monolith, which is kind of what I got from that. I also had some problems with a lot of the large plot lines that he conducted as well, the Riversong plotline being the primary one. I am still confused about that. Don't get me wrong, Moffat can write really good one-off episodes. Are You My Mummy was written by him. That was terrifying and excellent, but he should not be allowed into longer plot lines, apparently. But I do know that he's no longer the main writer, and I've heard good things about some of the more recent companions, so I may catch up at some point. For prompt number 3, we have The Micromanager. Bought it for work or uni, but never read it. This I did not buy. I actually borrowed it / got it from my aunt, but they are GRE prep books. I, of course, took my GRE before going into my master's program, but I really wanted to go into a PhD at some point, so I got these, and I have yet to look at them. I'm actually really dreading this because tests suck, especially since I haven't, like, done any in so long. You don't get tests in grad school. I'd much rather write them like a 30-page paper than do this. But I really need to get back up to date on some things if I do want to do my GRE. I'm hoping that maybe the program that doesn't require the GRE will just let me in. It's my ideal program anyways. But that would require me actually putting in the paperwork first, and I have absolutely not done that. because things have been hard. But that is the school book that I have yet to use. Prompt number 4 is The Boss, a book that you bought to organize your life, business, or home. And I have a few books for this just because there are a few different angles. One, of course, goes off of kind of the last question with stuff that you didn't really end up using. And for that sort of take on it, I have 10 Steps to Take Charge of Your Emotional Life by Eva Wood. Let's just see when this was published, because I honestly have no idea. This was published in 2007, and I think I got it from a thrift store at probably like 2009. So that's how long I've had this book, and I have not really gotten a chance to look at it, but I've since gotten other books that are more specific to my needs. Overcoming Procrastination is in a similar situation where I've had it for a while. The copyright on this is 1989, so I feel like there might be more relevant books. But I still have these for some reason. Now, a book that I haven't read yet but do plan on getting to, and has been written within the past decade, is Daring Greatly by Brené Brown. I know Brené Brown is pretty popular in the kind of self-help genre. I can't say I know very much about her, but I've heard lots of good things about this, so I got a copy. Now, a self-help book that I have read and used. It's probably the one that I've read and used the most, and that is You and Your Gender Identity, A Guide to Discovery by Dara Hoffman Fox. I highly recommend this. They actually have a YouTube channel, and they have been reading sections of this book. So if you want to see what it's like, to see if it would be helpful, definitely do that. It basically guides you through a lot of introspection, as well as gaining other tools that are going to help with that introspection. It's obviously great if you're questioning, and it's also great if you are really comfortable in your trans identity, because I think that you could even get something from this. Even if you're cis and just interested in thinking complexly about your gender, I think you could get something beneficial out of this, because if nothing else, the other tools that they go through and talk about are beneficial for everyone. The next prompt is The Caretaker, bought from a spiritual shop or in the spiritual section. And this was a little bit harder because while I do have a fair amount of religion books, most of them were gifted to me, and a fair amount of them I bought online because I wanted them specifically, and it's kind of hard to get very specific ones that aren't of a particular brand of religion around where I am. So the book that I picked is the only one that I think I bought at a physical store, although I found it in a slightly different section. And that is Fearfully and Wonderfully Made, Letters on Living with Hope, Teaching, Understanding, and Ministering with Love from a Gay Catholic Priest with AIDS by Robert Arpin. I bought this for 75 cents at the used bookstore. This was in the LGBT section, not the religious section, but it's the closest thing that I've got. I'm not Catholic. I don't really affiliate myself with a specific denomination of Christianity, but I thought that this would be really good. I've been looking more into various types of theology, like liberation theology, black theology, queer theology, and I thought this would go well with this. I've also got some topical TBRs looking at the history of the AIDS epidemic, so I thought that this might have some sort of insight into that as well. So maybe it doesn't fit as much into the obscure section of this tag, since it's kind of related to some of my interests, but it was a really random thrift store find that happens to be spiritual in nature. Prompt number 6 is The Hobbyist. You mentioned this one time, and now everyone gifts you things that are related to it, or you wanted to try out a new hobby, so you bought something. I thought this prompt was hilarious because I absolutely related to that sentiment. There have been years where I have said that, I want more Post-it notes and pens, and I would leave Christmas with a shitload of Post-it notes. and I'm pretty sure I have some of the pens. It also happened with socks. It happened fairly recently where maybe like 3 different people got me socks with animals on it, but 5 to 10 years ago, I also asked for socks and specified fuzzy socks as well, and that was the point at which my sock collection got out of hand. I left one of my grandparents' houses with a box that was probably about this big, so like it's not necessarily the biggest box, but it was stuffed to the brim with fuzzy socks. So my family goes hard when you say that you want something for Christmas. All of that being said, the book that I have that fits that is The Complete Yorkshire Terrier by Joan B. Gordon and Janet Bennett. I've had this book since I was like 10, probably. I used to be obsessed with dogs. I mean, completely obsessed. When I had computer time when I was over at my granny's house, I would spend a lot of the time on the AKC website looking at breeds of dogs, looking at how tall each of them was, what type of fur they had. I even tried to draw some of them despite having no artistic abilities whatsoever. Here's a sample, in fact, that has been used as a bookmark, if you can even see that. That's my attempt at a Yorkshire Terrier. But everyone used to get me animal-related stuff. And this was one of those things. This was a garage sale find from my granny, and I still have it. The next prompt is The Serial Killer. If people saw you reading it, they'd be worried. And for that, I have 4 Blood Moons, Something is About to Change by John Hagee. This was, I don't know if it was necessarily a gift, because I think my dad might have gotten this as a free copy, and maybe he just gave it to me because he didn't want it. I'm not really sure. I'm kind of hoping that it's that, and that he didn't actually think that I wanted an apocalyptic fear-mongering book. But man, it's exactly what it sounds like. So this is like end of days theology to the extreme, and that is absolutely not where I'm at with my own personal philosophy. But it seemed interesting and kind of funny, which I feel a little bit bad about because obviously this person believes that. But yeah, I just still have this book because I got it. The next prompt is The Traveler, The Only Way You Afford to See the Outside World, a book about a foreign place. For this, I don't necessarily have any books that are specifically about a place, but I did find 2 that kind of sort of fit the prompt. I haven't read either of them yet, and I don't think either of them are necessarily obscure. I'd like to read both of them. The first is Behind the Beautiful Forevers by Catherine Boo. From my understanding, this book looks at India, and specifically at some of the people in the lowest social caste. I bought it at least 5 years ago, but it seemed interesting at the time. I just haven't read it yet. And then one that I bought more recently is We Are Displaced by Malala Yousafzai. This looks at the experience of multiple kids and teenagers who are refugees. This is definitely one that I have higher up on my TBR. Then we have the final prompt, The Obscure, the weirdest, most obscure book you own. There is no other tag for this book. This is its time to shine. I've actually got 3 books for this. All 3 of these are basically just super old looking books. The only reason I really have them at this point is because they're old looking and interesting. First we have The History of the Peloponnesian War, which I believe this version was printed in 1926. The way that they had the print dates is not really what I'm used to. Would I read a book like this at some point? Maybe. Ancient history is cool, although it's not what I really typically read, but I would not be reading this copy because it's basically falling apart because it's so old. The next weird old book that is also falling apart that I have is The Homophonic Forms of Musical Composition. And there's an inscription in this that says, date, 1924, but just as good as today. So that's real good. This is a music theory book, and I think I picked this up at a used bookstore just because I was in AP Music Theory at the time, so I thought this was really cool and I was gonna read it and like figure out what it all meant, but joke's on me, I was terrible at music theory. But I still have this book, even though it's kind of falling apart. It looks cool sitting on my shelf, I suppose. The next weird old book that I have is slightly less old than the other two, but a lot less falling apart than the other two, and that is Soviet Russia, A Living Record and a History. And this was published in 1930. I originally got it because I thought it would be fun or hilarious to read about the United States perspective in 1930 on Soviet Russia. It just seems grounds for some ridiculous things. I haven't read that just because that's a lot of time out of my day for something that I just think is going to be funny. Kind of, maybe. Like, I don't even really know. If nothing else, it just looks pretty sitting on my shelf. So that is all that I have for the obscure book tag. Not all of these were all that weird, and a couple of them I might even mention in other videos, especially if I end up reading them. But this was still really fun. Let me know if you've read any of these, especially the more obscure ones, and thank you all so much for watching. Bye.